Hi there, everyone. It's Lee Henson here from Agiledad, and it's time for today's episode of the Daily Stand-Up. So without any further ado, let's get started. Today, I have an amazing guest with me. I have Pete Behrens. Pete, how are things going?
Hey, I'm doing great, Lee. Thanks for inviting me on the show.
Oh, no worries. It's my pleasure. It's my honor to have you. I got to tell you, this is one of those times, you know how sometimes when you see like a celebrity and you get a little bit of like fan shock and you're just kind of like, wow, this is so cool. One of the things I'm trying to do in this series is to establish agile experts, and Pete is the authority on agile leadership, and I got a little bit of fan nerves going on here, so I apologize, Pete, if it comes across that way. But as an expert in agile leadership, tell me, what do you see currently in the realm of agile leadership with regard to the way organizations are establishing agile in their workspaces?
Well, Lee, I see us as just two buds in a bar drinking a beer here. So, you and I go back and we're both Scrum trainers, coaches, and, I've been there for, 10 plus years in terms of that journey. And I got frustrated though. I got frustrated because every time I do a class, the number one thing that comes out is my manager needs to hear this.
Hmm.
And, I think there's a lot of good news out there to invite the manager to Scrum Master classes, things like that. But I think what we've been seeing over time, and this is proven out, year after year, we've seen those ClabNet state of agility reports every single year, and every single year we get the same results. And it's kind of like that, it's we don't if we don't change the system, we're not going to change those surveys. And so my frustration started actually way back in about 2007, and it was due to some of this. And it's like it put me on a journey that says we've got to solve this problem. We got to start to figure out what's the role of leaders, because they're the ones who are basically either enabling or inhibiting any of this stuff we're trying to teach, and Scrum Masters are in these systems that, make this difficult.
Right.
So, yeah. So number one, it's just, I'm speaking to the choir. I know, every Scrum Master, I was like, yeah, Pete, we get it, but what do we do about it? I can imagine. I don't know. How are you seeing that?
Yeah, so I agree. And I have to concur with one thing that you said. In all of my classes that I've taught, especially recently, within the past, I'd say 12 to 15 months, through COVID, I hear a lot of people saying, not only is it difficult as a Scrum Master, but it's difficult for me working remote as a Scrum Master. These messages are messages that our leaders need to hear. And it's important for me to point out, sometimes it's, I wish my C-level executive would do this, but truth. So I've taught over 600 now, I think, certified Scrum Master classes. And out of 600 classes, I've had 4 C-level executives attend out of 600 classes. So what I'm trying to say is rolling the dice hoping that that's going to happen is pretty much a 7 out, right? You're not going to get that to happen. So we need to find or formulate a better way. And I know that the Scrum Alliance has come up with their Certified Agile Leadership program, and I'm not knocking it. It's a good program, but I just think there's so much more to that journey. Did
Yeah.
you get that name drop there? No,
Yeah.
but, no, but it's one of these things where I just see the need, because everyone in class says, "Hey, I wish my leader knew this." So tell me more, Pete, about Agile Leadership Journey and what you're doing to make a difference. What kind of program are you putting together to help people kind of engage and get the support that they need?
Yeah, appreciate that. And it's interesting. Scrum Alliance actually asked us for their help in formation of the Certified Agile Leadership, and I gladly did that. Worked on a couple of programs with them, and our goal is to spread the awareness of leadership to more people. So the better we could do that, that's great. The challenge in Agile leadership is slightly different than the challenge in Scrum. So let me make a parallel here. In Scrum, we teach a framework.
Hmm.
So you and I can teach classes very differently, but when it comes down to it, people are learning how to do Scrum. They understand the roles, the ceremonies, the principles behind it, et cetera. When we get into Agile leadership, there is no framework. There is no one, it's like saying, okay, go teach Agile. And now you go teach Scrum, I go teach Kanban, Dean Leffing goes teach SAFe. And those are all great things to teach. But let's say we send our team of leaders out to learn Agile, and we all come back and we all fight because we're like, no, we need to do sprints. No, 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 we need flow. No, 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 we need a framework for Kandai ET. We're all right, but we all fight because we all see that different part of the elephant.
Hmm.
And so while inspirational from a Scrum Alliance perspective to say, hey, we got to bring this on a principle based, Cal's a principle based system, in reality, it's a wild goose chase. It's a wild, wild west of programs that are out there that you have no idea what you're going to get.
And I call this, by the way, I have a name for this. So, Pete, I call this the Agile. So whenever I'm talking about leadership and I say, hey, so you want to do the Agile, that's great. Let's talk about the Agile. And it's just because the Agile, they treat it like it's a thing. They treat it like it's a commodity. Let's go down to Costco and get the large size the Agile, because we want to scale it. No, but and I always joke and I say, as long as you have giant technical user requirements documents, we're all set. And they're like, why technical user requirements documents? And I tell them I'm a big fan of acronyms. The bigger the turd, the better, right? But it doesn't make any sense. So we've identified the problem. We've identified the audience. We've identified what's going on. So what kind of things are you, Pete, and your organization doing to make a difference? What are some of the tools that you provide that are helping people get across this chasm? Because it's a giant chasm, I'll tell you right now. And I'll tell you right now, everyone who's listening right now can relate to what you're saying. Yeah. So how do we cross the chasm?
So what we're trying to do that's a bit different. One thing we're trying to do is be a bit like the Scrum Alliance for Agile Leadership. And so we're forming a community of guides, trainers, and coaches who agree to share a set of models, a set of tools, some framework that when a global client comes and says, hey, we would like our leaders to be educated, aware, more woke on Agile, we're going to provide across all these guides a consistency that a company might expect, but we've got it in Germany, we've got it in US, we've got it in China and India, and in different countries, and they can get different educators, a slightly different approach to training, but they're going to get the same learning. So that's one thing is we're building that guide community to align. Now, the second thing we're doing, and the other challenge I have with many of the Agile leadership programs that are out there, is all they're really doing is teaching Agile to leaders. And while it's nice and helpful for them to understand Agile, it's not moving the needle. They don't change. They tend to delegate Agile to others in the organization. And so our whole philosophy is if leaders don't take an active role, an active responsibility, the transformation, whatever transformation that you're trying to do, won't succeed. It won't get past a plateauing effect of that culture and how an organization operates. And so what we're doing in our program is saying, hey, leader, first and foremost, you have to think different. Right. You have to behave different. We call this a microculture. And what's really fascinating about leaders that go through this is, first of all, they say, oh, this isn't an Agile class. This is a leadership class. And yes, bing, good. But secondly, agility is about me. And what people love about this is I can walk away from the leadership side of this and say, I don't need anybody's permission. I can change. I can be different. And so this is the inspirational, the educational, the awareness side of just as a leader, how you show up and how you can show up different. And most bad leadership to me is just ill-informed leadership. It's not purposefully bad. It's just ignorantly bad.
Yeah, I get that. One of the things that I took a shot in the dark, and this was a few years ago, I tried to put together a document called an Agile Leadership Playbook. And basically inside, I wanted it to be like 20 short pages. I didn't want it to be anything long-winded, but the three topics that I brought up as important, and you can call me out on this. One was, why is Agile important to me? So what about Agile is important to me as a leader? So it was more from a leader's perspective, why is Agile important? The second question was, how do I get started? And then the third question was, once I feel like I have confidence in what I'm doing, how do I scale this to the rest of my organization or to the rest of the world or to the rest of what's going on? And I realized that it's a very elementary or rudimentary approach, but my thought process was getting people unlocked from having a fixed mindset to a growth mindset and helping leaders kind of gain that vision. And I know that there are tons of tools out there, but I just wanted to know, I guess I'm going to ask you the three questions and not the same, what did you do yesterday? What are you doing today? And do you have any impediments? Thank goodness. But the first question is, I guess, if I'm an Agile leader, so I'm going to put myself in the shoes of one of my listeners. So if there's an Agile leader out there who says, Pete, you're speaking my language, this is for me. What do I need to do? How do I start? What is my starting point? How do I get started?
Yeah. So just as we might say, how do I get started to be a Scrum trainer? You got to go to a Scrum class. So for us, join one of our awareness workshops, learn about the models we're teaching. We're not here to build the models. We're leveraging research that's been going on for 30 plus years in leadership development, organizational development. This field is ripe, right? There's a lot of good tools out there. So we're banking on a couple of those tools. One is leadership agility from Bill Joyner and Stephen Josephs. This is a model I was introduced in the late 90s, with a couple of authors, Bradford and Cohen, who talk about leadership development. So what we're talking about here is we're not just making stuff up. We're leveraging a lot of strong research, just as Scrum was built on a lot of empirical, feedback and analysis. Same thing with leadership. And so what we're doing though is making it more accessible. And so the first point for anybody that's wanting to start on this journey is to go to one of these workshops and learn about what we're teaching. The second thing then is, all right, we don't find people that just want to teach leadership. What we find with leadership, it's probably a lot like Scrum. Like if you get a Scrum Master that wants to be a certified Scrum Trainer or coach, they're all like, yeah, I want to do this. And then you ask, well, what's your experience in actually going through an Agile transformation? It's like, how effective are you going to be? Well, the same is true with leadership. We have a lot of guides or coaches or trainers who like, I want to be a leadership coach. It's like, okay, where's your leadership experience? Can you share a story when you had to lay somebody off or when you had to do priorities that didn't match? That leadership background is essential to, especially when you're dealing with leaders who demand that trust. You have walked in their shoes, you know what this looks like. So it is a bit of a subset when you're starting to talk about somebody that knows Agile, somebody that has leadership experience, somebody that's been involved in some of these transformations. In fact, we find some of our best guides come not from the Agile side of the world, but more of the leadership and organizational development side of the world.
Right.
Yeah.
And that makes perfect sense. That's something that I've encountered too in my journey, that a lot of times I have leaders and executives who want to meet with me. And don't get me wrong, I have a ton of leadership experience. It's just, I don't know that I've been introduced to all the correct toolkits to get going. So I think, Pete, that advice that you're giving is phenomenal, that you have to find the right person. Because I'll tell you right now, so before we had this call, I did a quick search on different leadership trainers or leadership training programs. And there have to be 100,000 that I found, just quick. But what I noticed right away was that most of them came from a very dogmatic approach. They weren't psychology based. They were dogmatic. It was the spandex one size fits all. Sign up today for $800 and receive your Agile credential, your certificate that says that now you're an Agile leader. And that doesn't get you very far when it comes to, okay, now I have to make a critical decision for my company. What do I do? Right? You don't get that kind of experience from someone that just goes to a 2-day workshop with any trainer. And I think that's why what you're doing in your organization is so important, Pete. It's providing true leadership guidance, I guess is the right word, for people to expand beyond what they already know, not just with regard to Agile, but part of it's just how to be a better leader. And I think those are the things that are critical, and those are the things that are missing. So I do know that you have a couple of ways. So I want to make sure I pin this down. My second question for you is, how does someone reach you if they want to sign up for a workshop, if they want to listen to your podcast, if they want to find out more about what you're doing? What's the best way for them to get in touch with you, Pete?
Yeah, there's really two ways to get in touch, but let me hold on that for just one second.
Go ahead. No,
I want to address something you said about certification.
Oh yeah, go for it.
Because what's interesting about certification, we've learned, the earlier people are in their career, certifications help propel leaders or anybody trying to get more influence in an organization to grow. As leaders get experience as a director, as a VP, as certifications fall away. They're not useful. So one of the things is this really interesting mix with certifications, in that as you get further up, those become irrelevant. And while we still use them because we still want to talk about there's something behind here. If we're just looking for certification seekers, it's not really our approach. And I know you and I agree on a lot of this. Right. We're looking for people that really want to grow and develop rather than just, put another credential behind their name. So as far as reaching us, the Agile Leadership Journey.com, is the number one place to learn a little bit more about programs. And what we love about this is, we're not only just teaching public classes. Most of what we do are private engagements with clients where this becomes part of their leadership development curriculum.
I love that.
So if we've got some HR people out there, we've got internal advocates, this is a program, and then we'll bring guides in. So we've got a couple examples of this with companies like Vodafone, where we've got internal guides, becoming Agile Leadership Journey guides that are then developing leaders in their organizations. So Agile Leadership Journey is one place to go to learn more about the programs. We have both awareness and practice, and public and private programs. The second place to a little bit lighter touch is we also have a podcast called Relearning Leadership.
I love it.
And what we love about this podcast is we're bringing some of these leader stories into the podcast and then combining it with some expert analysis to help us all learn from these stories. And so we're bringing in, sometimes we bring in experts like a Dean Leffingwell, but other times we're bringing in these really interesting mixes for people to learn from. And so that's at relearningleadership.show. And we just finished our first season. So you're on episode 300. We're just on episode 13. We just kicked it off, but it's been a really fascinating ride.
That is so awesome. And what is the frequency that you release those, just in case people are looking for new episodes and they want to subscribe? Does it happen? Are you shooting for monthly? Are you shooting just as they come, or what do you?
We're on a sprint cycle. So we're on a two week rhythm, and we package in seasons. So we just finished season 1. We're on a slight break. So we'll be kicking off season 2 here in the early fall. And so if that's another place, people have stories and leadership stories that want to share, they can always reach out to us there too.
That's awesome. And my third question, because I promise you to be 3, I always throw this question to every single person I interview. So Pete, if there's one thing that you could do to change the world with regard to, in your specialty, with regard to leadership, with regard to Agile, if I gave you permission to pull one lever and you could change something and it would just automatically change without any ramifications, without anybody getting fired or dying, what lever would you pull first? What would you want to change? What would you want to see as the future?
Humility, more humility. The number one impediment to most leadership is the feeling that we have to have the answer. We're in charge. Right. We are the ones that have to manage everything. And I think the leaders that get it learn that that's not their role. Their role is to enable those things to occur. Yes. But that means I got to take a step back. I got to be open to other ideas. And that is, our ego is the number one impediment to more creative, agile ways of working in organizations. And so we all have it. It's a human characteristic, some of us more than others. Yeah. I'm not immune. I'm on the journey too. And, but if there's one lever, it's increasing that humility of, empowering everybody in the organization to step forward.
If I had to identify one thing that people are probably tired of hearing me say, but I'm going to say it one more time anyway. When you lose yourself in the service of others, that's when you discover who you really are. So sometimes it's taking that step back and being humble and expressing that humility. That's going to make you the better person. It's going to make you the better leader. It's going to make you a stronger person in a relationship that you have with your spouse, partner, significant other. It's going to make you have better relationships with your children. It's going to change your life. So Pete, I couldn't think of a better way to end. So most importantly, thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for your time. You have been absolutely amazing. I highly recommend, if you haven't already done this, go visit the website, go listen to the podcast. Guilty as charged. I need to do a better job. I need to go follow up and listen to the podcast because I didn't even know it was there. So I need to go follow up and listen to that. But as always, we encourage you to stay healthy, stay well, and stay agile, my friends. Until next time, do take care. We'll see you, Pete.
Thank you.